The night was unusually cold for spring, and the restaurant's warm glow spilled onto the empty street, a fragile invitation to anyone seeking company. Inside, laughter echoed from nearby tables, but in one corner, a different kind of tension lingered, heavy and uninviting. Emma sat quietly in her wheelchair, her fingers brushing nervously over the hem of her cardigan. Her legs had not moved without assistance for 3 years, and her heart carried a weight heavier than the braces that once tried to keep her upright. She was paralyzed from the waist down, a cruel twist of fate that left her vulnerable in ways she never imagined. The irony of tonight gnawed at her. Her so-called friends had arranged this date as a joke, a cruel experiment in humiliation. She was supposed to meet a man who would laugh at her limitations, whose polite words would eventually give way to discomfort and pity. Emma had protested, had begged them not to set her up, but their laughter had drowned her pleas. "It's harmless," they said. "He'll never notice you're different. Just go and enjoy yourself." But she knew better. She had felt the sting of the world's cruelty long enough to recognize it. As she waited, the door opened, and a man stepped inside, a figure tall, impeccably dressed, with the aura of someone who had conquered the world with intelligence and ambition. Alexander Kane, CEO of one of the largest tech firms in the city, walked with a quiet confidence, his sharp gaze scanning the room. He wasn't here for fun, for games, or for meaningless flattery. He was here for a blind date, arranged by a mutual acquaintance, but nothing in his poised demeanor suggested he knew anything about the cruel plan set in motion against Emma. Emma's heart hammered in her chest, a mix of fear, shame, and anticipation. She had rehearsed what she might say if the laughter came, how she would shrink into herself and escape without crying. But something about Alexander's presence made the air feel different, less hostile, more measured, like a calm in the middle of a storm. And then he saw her. Unlike the others who would avert their eyes, laugh nervously, or force a polite smile, Alexander walked straight to her table. His hand reached out, not in judgment, not in pity, but in genuine human connection, and lightly touched hers. In that instant, the world shifted. The mockery, the whispers, the cruelty, they didn't exist here. There was only the simple, profound gesture of acknowledgement. Emma's eyes blurred, not with humiliation, but with an unfamiliar warmth, a fragile thread of hope she hadn't dared to feel in years. If you believe in kindness and second chances, in moments where humanity can shine even in the darkest settings, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Stars of Kindness. The dinner began awkwardly at first. Emma's friends snickered quietly from their hidden tables, their whispers meant to humiliate, but Alexander remained undisturbed. He spoke with sincerity, asking questions about her life, her interests, the books she loved, and the dreams she hadn't given up on. Every word was a bridge, slowly dismantling the walls Emma had built around her heart. The gentle way he listened, the slight nods, the smiles that weren't forced, all of it chipped away at her fear, replacing it with something entirely unexpected: trust. It wasn't just the attention, it was the way he saw her as a person, not a punchline. For the first time in years, Emma felt human again, not an object of pity or a subject of cruel amusement. She remembered how it had felt before the accident, how she used to move freely, laugh without restraint, dream without limitation. And though her body had betrayed her, Alexander's presence reminded her that the spirit could remain unbroken, resilient, and alive. The evening grew darker outside, but the candlelight on their table made everything intimate, cocooned in an almost cinematic glow. Emma found herself smiling, cautiously at first, then more openly, and soon, she was laughing at stories he shared. Stories of boardroom failures, awkward first days, and family chaos that made her forget, just for a moment, the cruel setup. There was no judgment in his laughter, only shared humanity. But just as the warmth began to settle in, Emma's friends decided to escalate their joke. One of them, emboldened by the shadows, thought it funny to spill a drink across her lap, aiming to create chaos, to watch the humiliation unfold. Emma froze, heart thundering in her chest, certain this was the moment Alexander would recoil, as everyone else had done countless times before. Instead, Alexander's hand moved instantly, steady and protective, shielding her from further discomfort. His voice was calm, authoritative, but soft, a rare combination that demanded attention without fear. The friends were silenced, suddenly aware of the dignity in this man's actions, the gravity of his presence. That night, Emma realized something she hadn't allowed herself to hope for. not everyone in the world would see her as broken. Not everyone would see her as less. And in that realization, something deep within her stirred. A flicker of courage, a spark of self-worth that had long been buried beneath layers of doubt and fear. The days that followed the blind date were unlike anything Emma had experienced in years. Her phone, which had mostly been a lifeline to dull routines and distant friends, now buzzed with messages from Alexander. He didn't bombard her with empty compliments or shallow small talk. Each message carried warmth, curiosity, and a rare sense of understanding. He asked about her day, her art projects, the books she was reading, and sometimes just shared moments from his own life, exposing vulnerabilities he rarely showed the world. Emma had spent so long believing her life was defined by limitations that she almost didn't recognize the excitement bubbling inside her. Every notification made her pulse quicken, every thoughtful question he asked chipped away at years of insecurity. But along with hope came fear, the fear that it was too good to be true, that this man, so composed and commanding, would eventually see her as less than, and leave. One afternoon, Alexander invited her to the city's botanical gardens. The wheelchair-accessible paths wound through flowering archways and sun-dappled courtyards, a space alive with fragrance and color. As Emma wheeled herself along, she noticed the subtle care in every detail he had considered, how the benches were placed for easy rest, how the paths avoided steep inclines, and how he stayed just a step behind, ready to assist without making her feel weak. For the first time, Emma allowed herself to speak honestly, without the filter of shame. She talked about her accident, the years of rehabilitation, and the loneliness that had become a constant companion. Alexander listened intently, never interrupting, never pitying. And when she paused, struggling with tears, he didn't look away. Instead, he reached for her hand, holding it gently, letting her know that he wasn't leaving. That simple gesture, repeated over and over, became a lifeline. Life outside the sanctuary of their connection, however, remained unkind. Emma's so-called friends continued their subtle cruelty, texts full of snide remarks, invitations to events she knew were traps, social media posts mocking her vulnerabilities. Each time, Alexander was there to protect her, to remind her that the opinions of the unkind were not a measure of her worth. But even with his support, the scars of betrayal and public humiliation ran deep. One evening, as the city lights shimmered against the river, Alexander invited Emma to his penthouse apartment. The space was sleek and grand, yet devoid of pretension. It was his private world, and he chose to share it with her. They looked out over the city skyline, the lights like a million tiny stars, and Alexander quietly admitted that he had also faced moments of isolation, moments when the weight of expectations threatened to crush him. I know what it feels like to be invisible, to feel like no one sees your true worth, he said softly, turning toward her. But I see you, Emma. Not the wheelchair, not the limitations, but you, everything you are. Tears streamed down Emma's face, a torrent of years of suppressed pain, fear, and hope colliding. She had dreamed of kindness, of acceptance, but never imagined it would come with such sincerity, with such depth. She realized that vulnerability was not weakness, and trust could be given, even after betrayal, if met with genuine care. Their bond strengthened in ways that words alone could never capture. Alexander began to involve Emma in decisions that mattered to him, charitable foundations he was passionate about, mentoring young entrepreneurs, even visiting hospitals to support patients facing disabilities. Emma's perspective, once limited by fear and self-doubt, now became a beacon for others, and she felt alive in a way she hadn't since before her accident. But the world still had its tests. One night, a scandal erupted on social media. Photos of their early date leaked online, accompanied by cruel commentary mocking Emma. The mockery hit her like a punch to the chest, threatening to undo all the healing she had begun. Alexander refused to let it define her. He stood beside her, facing the world together, his calm strength a shield against the storm. That night, she understood fully what it meant to be seen, not just for survival, but for the courage to be herself. Through every trial, every whisper of cruelty, Emma learned to find power in vulnerability, and Alexander discovered that empathy and human connection could ground even the busiest, most guarded CEO. Together, they began to redefine what it meant to love and be loved, proving that even in a world that thrives on judgment, compassion could carve a path through despair. The weeks turned into months, and Emma's world, once confined by fear and humiliation, began to expand in ways she had never imagined. Her relationship with Alexander had become a sanctuary of trust, respect, and unwavering support. But life, as it often does, was not without its challenges. Emma's confidence grew, yet every step forward came with the lingering fear of being judged, of being treated as a spectacle. One rainy evening, Alexander invited her to a charity gala his company was hosting, a black tie event designed to raise funds for disabled children. Emma hesitated at first. The thought of being in the spotlight, surrounded by people who might judge or pity her, made her stomach twist with anxiety. Yet, Alexander's steady presence reminded her of all she had endured and all she had survived. With his hand holding hers, she entered the grand hall, the soft glow of chandeliers illuminating the sea of faces. The room was filled with the usual polished smiles and polite applause, yet something shifted when Alexander guided Emma to the stage. He spoke to the crowd about courage, resilience, and the power of empathy, introducing her not as a victim, but as a leader, a survivor, and an inspiration. Emma's hands trembled slightly as she raised them to wave, but the applause that followed was unlike anything she had ever heard, warm, genuine, and full of admiration. It was in that moment that she realized something extraordinary. The world had not changed, but she had. The fears that once held her captive, the ridicule that once silenced her, had lost their power because she had found her voice. Alexander's faith in her, his simple acts of kindness and unwavering support, had unlocked a strength she didn't know she possessed. As the evening drew to a close, the crowd began to leave, and Alexander stayed close, smiling down at her with quiet pride. The rain outside had stopped, leaving the city streets glistening like polished glass, reflecting the lights in patterns that seemed almost magical. Emma felt tears slip down her cheeks, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming beauty of a life reclaimed. She turned to Alexander, and in a moment that words could scarcely capture, she understood the depth of their connection. This wasn't just attraction, or pity, or fleeting infatuation, it was a bond forged in the fire of adversity, a love that had grown stronger through shared vulnerability and courage. Alexander took her hand once again, but this time it wasn't a gesture of reassurance alone, it was a promise. A promise that in a world that often tried to diminish them, they would face everything together. No humiliation, no fear, no cruelty could undo the truth that had taken root in their hearts, that they were stronger together, and that the strength to love and be loved could heal even the deepest wounds. Later, as they left the gala, Emma wheeled herself through the rain-slick streets, the city lights reflecting off the puddles like fragments of hope scattered across the ground. She breathed in deeply, the cool night air filling her lungs with a sense of liberation she hadn't felt in years. For the first time, she wasn't defined by what she couldn't do, she was defined by her courage, her heart, and the unwavering belief that kindness could change lives. The cruel joke that had begun as a humiliating setup had transformed into a story of triumph, proving that the world's cruelty could be overcome by compassion, courage, and genuine human connection. Emma had been lifted from the shadows of doubt and fear, not by chance, but by someone who saw her not as broken, but as whole. And in that realization, she finally understood that life's most profound moments often come disguised as challenges, and love's most powerful form is the one that heals without judgment. If this story touched your heart, if it made you believe that kindness, second chances, and courage can change lives, please take a moment to like, comment, and share this video. Let us know in the comments how a small act of compassion has transformed your life, and subscribe to Stars of Kindness to be a part of more stories that inspire and move hearts. Emma and Alexander's journey is a reminder that no matter the obstacles, no matter the pain or ridicule, love and kindness have the power to rewrite a story, to heal wounds that seem permanent, and to create moments of beauty and hope in the darkest of circumstances. And for Emma, the paralyzed girl once set up as a joke, life had finally opened a door to the world she had always deserved. A world full of dignity, respect, and the boundless possibility of love.